Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our panel, Stay at Home Gaming, where we'll be discussing some concepts and platforms that we've been seeing using when gaming at home. Obviously, right now it's a little hard for us to be playing games face to face. So today we'll be chatting about how we can overcome this. So, again, my name is Banana Chan. I'm a game designer and publisher. Renegade keeps inviting me back to doing panels, so I'm sure I'm doing something right. With me today are Ivan Van Norman and Spenser Starke. Unfortunately, Senfil Lim can't make it today, but let's go ahead and start by introducing one another. Let's start with you, Ivan.
Okay, cool. My name's Ivan Van Norman. I am a game designer, and I am one of the partners of Hunters Entertainment, which has had the pleasure of making a bunch of cool games like Altered Carbon, Outbreak Undead, the Kids on Bikes line, which Banana has had the opportunity to write for, and then all of Spencer's games, all Spencer Stark's games, all the time. Because he's a home run hitter when it comes to some pretty immersive, fun stuff. So, but I occasionally do play my own games on media from time to time, and just thanks for having me here.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Spencer Starke. I am a game designer uh, and a producer here in LA. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to always be on stuff with you two. You are some of my favorite people in the whole world. So
really it's just fine. You're just breaking the boundaries, Rez. What you're doing at this point. This is why you're allowed to be here, is because everything you make is kind of in a position to move and shake the world a little bit. But we're not the only ones. Everyone's thinking about how to bring games into this space versus like everything else. And when we're so used to it on the table, it's forcing change.
And what's weird too is that like the first game that I published with you guys at Hunters was Icarus, which is like almost relies on being at a table.
It's a Dex
together.
game,
and so
it's a Dex game.
So that's
you got
it's a Dex
you got to
game.
stack.
It's literally like so like it's one of those things where I had to rethink about how we approach that game when playing it, online, which was a really interesting kind of challenge. And then obviously with Alice sort of going the full opposite spectrum, like it being a game that is almost perfect to be played in isolation. So. And anyway, it's just funny that like swinging from those two like sides of the field, it's seeing that dissonance is really interesting, and watching how the industry has reacted to the need to be apart while playing together has been fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And were we gonna say something?
No, by all means. I mean,
okay.
I have many thoughts and opinions about how things are going, and it's mostly just because I'm really enjoying watching the industry like look at this space and be like, okay, what can we do? Right? Everyone still loves their games. People are still buying games. Everyone wants to play. The desire has not gone away to want to play games. But now it's just about how do we get to a place where we can actually manipulate and make that happen to a place that still feels satisfying and comforting.
Yeah. Well, that's a thing, right? Like playing games, feels like it's a different feel. So like capturing that same sort of magic is really hard online, and I think that we're doing a lot of there's a lot of designers doing some really cool work to capture it, including like solo RPGs, which isn't technically online quite, but it's like playing at home, right? Like playing yourself, like that's, I don't know, there's something fascinating there too, but I'm sure we're getting off topic, but so sorry.
That's okay. No,
this is all the same. This is all one conversation that we're having.
Sure.
So I mean, it's all the same thing. It all mingles with each other. But actually, let's start by talking about like some games that we're playing online that doesn't necessarily integrate the online as in the game. Like, have you been playing using like Roll20 or Zoom, or how are you playing your games that you usually play?
I mean, Roll20 and Tabletoptopia and Tabletop Simulator, like all of these video game, like, or it's just Steam, right? These virtual boards are obviously a great analog because they provide a space for everyone to connect to it. But we're so used to it moves the goalpost a little bit for getting people to there, just because we have to like learn a new interface, right? Like rather than just pick up a character sheet and write into it, we have to now type and manipulate a board, and then we have situations like we have this call now where we all want to talk. We have all the intertubes just colliding into each other as we deal with lag and delay and things like that. And I do feel like that there's a position where, as designers start finding ways to integrate technology that they makes, again, the Zoom or the virtual space feel organic, or at least leans into the mechanics of it, we can start to see like some really unique stuff come about it. Has anyone ever heard a long-time listener, last-time caller?
Yes.
Yeah, you familiar,
that
Banana?
game.
Yeah.
I love that game so much.
Yeah.
So that's an awesome example, right? I mean, that game is 100%. It's there's hardly any rules to it at all. It's a very mechanically almost non-existent game, but it's a prompt. It's a story prompt that demands that you, as a player, like put yourself into the like this calling in for the radio during the apocalypse kind of an attitude, and it still flexes those muscles, but it instead leans into this like, okay, well, we don't have to be looking at each other because I'm calling you on the phone, right? I could turn my camera off and talk to all of you and still play that game, and it would still be satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
And also what's kind of interesting about that game as well is that it does create an artifact afterwards, and it sort of integrates this thing where it's like you might have an artifact at the end, sort of like how Alice is Missing as well. Like you have these artifacts after like making this thing, right? Yeah, and I think that's really cool. And are there any games
I was gonna say to flip things back on you, Banana, you have a game where you're literally creating artifacts. It's a solo game where you're creating. It's called. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's the one where you upload videos to YouTube, and it's a conspiracy. Yes, it's so good. I've watched so many of them. It's so brilliant because it's creating that. It's like that lives on the internet as a prop, like it's a thing that exists after the game. Anyway, go check it out if you haven't checked it out. It's absolutely fascinating. Throwing it back on you, Mod.
Well, we've just been so used
it's so good.
We've just been used to packaging these things up in these little places, and now people are starting to learn about like itch.io, and people are starting to find these places where these little indie games are starting to exist, and they actually integrate that into your gameplay. And it's fun because it's like now that board games and role-playing games have become mainstream, we're finding this new like indie scene inside of it again, that's kind of being discovered. The Ivy League college crew of RPGs are starting to be like innovating in this new frontier, in this new space. And that's fun, and that's healthy. In fact, if anything, that just shows that this is not going away by any stretch of the imaginations. People aren't going to go back to just, now that we're all in quarantine, yes, people are playing video games, and myself amongst many are enjoying that time to be able to get into it, but that doesn't remove the desire to want to connect, which is where we are.
No, not at all.
And
fascinating.
I don't know what's going on. Like we can speculate all day, but where the next couple of months are going to go, it's all up to air. But developers who are out there, it's like this is a unique opportunity to go and try to like stretch your legs and partner up with some people who know technology, or go take some weekend crash courses in HTML5 or CSS. Like Spenser, bless his soul, learned Roll20 in basically a couple of weekends, so that we could make sure that Alice is Missing is integrated and ready to go and feels like gratifying on the virtual tabletop. So
I literally learned HTML, CSS, like it was just like being able to like dive into that side of things is really fascinating, to be able to to be forced as a game designer to look at games in a different way and go like, what can we do with this space we've been given? And I think there's something you were talking, Ivan, about like. And for those of you who are watching, like I am on a phone with Zoom, and I'm on a computer with video, because for whatever reason the microphone wouldn't work, and that's why we were delayed. Oh, I have a puppy barking. The microphone joys of being at home. Again, joys of doing this not from an office.
Yeah.
But we're having to like figure out and adapt to these sort of things. And I think once people start to get their feet with those, what it's going to do in the long run, I think one of the benefits of this in the long run is that it's going to, a lot of times we're playing games with people that are in our city, right? Like that are in, or just in our like neighborhood because they're close. And I think that the more we start to open up the game field into being something that can be approached virtually, which places have already been doing. I mean, there are plenty of online communities that have, oh God, my dog, plenty of online communities that are already open to this kind of thing and are already looking at how we can play with people all across the globe. But like when games are specifically designed for that, it becomes a lot easier to be able to like pick up your computer and play with people that you aren't normally with, which is really neat.
Mm-hmm. So let's definitely
even
talk
when the
about,
pandemic
like,
is not happening, right?
Nope. Go banana, please.
Yeah, for sure.
We get into it.
Yeah, like what are
Please, sorry.
what are some things that you've learned, like, both in the publishing sphere and like the design sphere, like when you're making these games for online use versus like IRL in-person use? Like, what are the two differences that you've encountered, like the pitfalls and like the successes?
I would let's start with pitfalls first, because I always feel like it's better to learn from mistakes than learn from successes, right? I would say that I was looking at a game that I really appreciated and wanted to kind of like play around with a bit. And have either of you played View Scream at all or heard of View Scream?
Yes.
So I love View Scream, especially as an exercise, as trying again to think about this space as a place to play. But playing it and getting into it, I'm like, okay, this is a LARP game. Like this feels like I'm basically immersing myself inside of a LARP, but it didn't scratch enough for me. It didn't feel quite satisfying the way that it does when I'm trying to get a little more mechanics, a little more crunch, and make it feel like I have some more agency, right? So this wasn't my mistake, but the point is that I well, it kind of was. It's like I looked at View Scream and I was like, okay, well, what could I do to like take the spirit of View Scream, which is awesome, and then make it into something that like, someone who is like into horror but has never played a role-playing game before, but it's not like a deep role player, like a deep actor can play, right? And still capture that horror essence a little bit. And I looking at it and thinking about it and playing into it, it's like, man, I had a lot of bad starts on that, like a lot of things that just did not work. And it usually centered around trying to integrate technology too much into the game. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Spencer, it's like I have a phone and I have the monitor here. It's like there were so many things in which I was trying to integrate technology and actually really hurt the game. So there's these simple things that you can do to make it immersive, but if you try to do too much, just like regular game design, you try to add too many rules, it just ends up being clunky. So technology is the same way.
Yeah, and I think that there's with everything good that comes from being able to be together virtually, it's a lot more exhausting. I feel like to be on a call like this for 4 hours than it is to play a role-playing game together in person for 4 hours. I think that is for a multitude of reasons. One of them being that usually when we're on a call like this, we're seeing ourselves, which is not something that we're seeing most of the time when we're in person together. And seeing yourself is exhausting because you're like judging yourself every second. You know what I mean? And there's this like implicit, at least for me, there's this like weight that I feel being on calls like this for work or for play or whatever. It's way more exhausting than normal. So in that regard, I think that and Ivan, you sort of spoke to this, like streamlining the design to be able to make it accessible quickly, or offloading some of that work before the game begins, right? Like in Alice, we do, because of in the virtual space, we do part of the prep before we meet up together. We do it over email. And that's because when we get in the call together, I want us to be able to move through everything very quickly and then get into the actual game. Otherwise, players get exhausted. And so finding ways to streamline and take into consideration the added stress that comes with a digital format. I think also, we in something like Roll20, we faced an issue just for no fault of anybody except for technology, that like you have to learn the interface that you're working with as much as you're learning the rules of the game. So your rules of the game and the interface have to be bundled into the same length of learning time, or not have to, but I feel like should be, so that we are successfully playing games in a reasonable amount of time, be bundled into the same amount of learning time that a normal game would take up. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense.
Double the prep.
Okay. Double the prep. Yeah.
It's double the prep. And one of the things that I didn't realize until you talked about it, and it makes so much stress in it, and I feel like the term that I was thinking about in my head, it's the video fatigue, the video call fatigue of not like Banana, when I talk to you, I like to make eye contact. I like to look at you, make acknowledgments, see your facial reactions. I can't stop seeing this stupid little square of me in this thing right now. And I want it to go away in every stretch of the imagination. And then you do something like this, where you're looking at the camera, and this is really good. And these are just like basic, learning how to play the camera. And not everyone has these skills where you learn like, hey, you need to talk to the camera if you want to relate, make it personal. And now, like if you're a viewer, this is a lot more relatable because it looks like I'm making eye contact with you, right? But this is so hard to think about and manage while I'm also trying to track things on the screen and conversation. That's good. So if you're playing RPGs
and you're also
at home,
not getting that visual feedback. Yeah.
No, you're not getting that visual feedback. If I had if my tiny
at the
monitor,
camera.
I'm doing weird things right now, but if I had a tiny monitor that literally lived right here, so that I could look at both.
It's like a teleprompter.
Yeah. If I had a prompter. Oh, I mean, we've there's been so many RPG, so many live play board games in which the prompter has saved my life with like 5 pages of how to play script, right? Like if we had a social prompter that would allow you to make eye contact, but also get that visual feedback. Oh, just okay. So
that'd be
software
so much
engineers,
better.
hardware engineers, can you get me a tiny screen right here behind my video camera so that I can actually like look at Banana and Spenser and be able to make some kind of contact? Because that would be amazing. It would solve so many problems.
Well, and I think that that speaks to like on a design side, like we have to be prepared that is the way that players are going to feel when they're playing these games. And so we need to build that into our design. If we're designing a game for online play specifically, we need to build that in. Now, I think there's a whole other conversation, and maybe this is a topic that we'll broach later. I don't know. You tell me, Banana. But like the idea of taking a game that isn't designed for digital play and adapting it for online play, in a sense, like moving it into that space as opposed to building it for that space. I don't know. There's a whole different conversation there, and ways that we should, ways we can adapt, and it's difficult. Oh, my puppy!
Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna go grab him really quick. Hold on, I'll be right back.
It's okay. I'm also writing these things down. Yeah, bring the dogs back.
Oh, I'm just letting him outside. That's all. I'm not bringing him on stream, although I could.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay,
it's
sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Live streaming.
All the questions are: will Spenser show us his doggo?
Stick around.
Well, there's these little endorphin hits that we get from seeing our little things, because guess what? The dogs don't make eye contact with you all the time, and you can still relate to that little fluffy thing that's there.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot more relatable. I mean, Banana, I know that we don't have Sen here today, so I feel like it's my job just as much to grill you about this topic as well as anything else. I hope you don't mind, but
tag team, let's go.
But what do you feel like has been kind of something that you've learned or has come into it? Like, have you seen success and failures in this space trying to bring RPG gaming at home on your end as both a developer and as a player as well too?
Yeah, like a lot of what I've been seeing is that I get bored really easily. I've noticed about myself that I get bored really easily when I'm not talking to other people. Like when we're not making eye contact, we're not, around the table. I'm just like, okay, it's not my scene right now. Someone else is playing their scene. I can be on my phone, or I can like go make lunch or something. And I feel like that's sort of an issue when it comes to trying to integrate like say, for example, you're playing a D&D campaign and, you're trying to play it on Discord, some people are going to get bored and it's not as immersive. Whereas like if you're building something, with Discord in mind, then it might be a little more immersive. So yeah, something to think about.
Yeah.
That's just something I've noticed.
There could be ways. I mean, I think about this too, but there's an old adage of like the old play by post where you can come in and check in on your game, but you're not setting any kind of pacing and parameters. As long as you've set those expectations that this is like a play by post style written game. But Alice is missing one of the things that, here we go, pump up Spenser, but one of the things that was really innovative about Alice is Missing that made the game pacing work perfectly is it was set to a timer. Like it was set to a 90-minute timer. Once you've established your characters, once you've established the game, you play the game for 90 minutes. And for me, as someone who stay at home with a rampant schedule, has calls all the time, is very, very frantic, it's like that's extremely appealing. Like I budget 2 hours and it's not going to run over. Like it's not going to be that like D&D time where a 2-hour session can easily turn into a 6-hour session, and you don't even have to try that hard, especially on virtual tabletop where a 2-hour session by default turns into a 4-hour session, which then can turn into a 6-hour session, right? But even those putting those boxes, those time parameter boxes around pacing can reduce things like the screen fatigue. When we did the world premiere live play of Alice is Missing a couple of days ago, yesterday. Time.
Was it yesterday? No, it was the day before. It was the day before. It was Thursday.
Oh God,
yeah,
time.
Yeah. It's all blurred together.
Time.
But we rebroadcast it yesterday. Yeah.
We just rebroadcast it yesterday. But this live play, which was phenomenal, and we just had cameras on them, and they weren't looking into cameras; they were engaged in what they were typing. But you could still register all of the emotions, and then you were following the different text conversations that were happening across the bottom of the screen, and that almost was like passing the fatigue on to the viewer. But it wasn't fatigue and like I have to look at all this. It's kind of like you're engaged in trying to keep up with everything. And I saw lots of people who are like, oh, I need to watch it again so I could follow the next track of conversation. And that, like, if you can get a player to feel that way, where they are like, they have to manage the conversations. And one of the things we talked about with Alice is Missing that made it feel so natural is like doing a text conversation and keeping track of like multiple group chats and things like that. That's something that we deal with on a day-to-day basis already. This is already a relatable thing that we do. So what are other relatable things that we can turn into storytelling to play stay at home, even if it's with our favorite games? Like how do you make D&D and Call of Cthulhu and Outbreak Undead, and how do you make these games feel like they're a part of your life? I know, right? Just slide that in there.
So this might be a little bit like a callback, but like, do you remember those forums, like those forums in maybe like the late 90s, early 2000s or whatever, where you're like role playing on a forum? It's like a chat forum.
Play by
and like
post.
people would do, play by post. Yep. So like something like that, like what do you think about that? Like would that work now?
I don't know, because I haven't done it. I
think it absolutely would. Like I'm just taking Alice as an example, right? People are so they get so invested in stories when they're able to feel themselves inside of it. Like there's a thing that when they're able to feel like they're not having to suspend their disbelief as much, you can get so much more immersed. And I think play by post and text messages and these kinds of things do that. And so I think if you were to find the right story, not even the right story, but the right like genre or subgenre to be able to tackle something like that. I'm not sure what it is right now, but I'm sure you could find like whatever it is.
Sci-fi.
Cyberpunk, so good. And it's like you could, like that kind of thing. You could absolutely play, play by post if you were to format everything correctly, and it would feel really new, even though it's older, And like I started playing, I remember as a child playing, kind of as a child, but like as a teenager with friends, like doing role playing over AIM, which is where Alice is Missing came from, AIM, right? Like that's where the name came from. And so that kind of instant messenger chat. I mean, if you're using like Skype or Zoom or one of those to like do chats together is really interesting. But absolutely, I think there's places for those things, and the more I think about it, the more I think we can. By going back, we're moving forward in a way, right? By like simplifying, we're winning.
The early days of the internet, when we had very lo-fi graphics and very bad internet connections, are now the gateway of stay-at-home tabletop RPG playing. And if we can go back to like pixels and text, because frankly, a lot of us as role players, we can survive with pixels and text, right? Because we've been using our imagination for so long. But that sounds my kids, your dog, my kid. This is quarantine life.
Hey, at home. Yep.
Back home, as playing at home, and that's the thing, is being able to also do things like those little interruptions of life that you would normally roll around as well too, if you were in a situation with the table. Like that's the thing. You're going to hear these kind of arguments at a table anyway, but they're a lot more acceptable because you just take them down and you move them in. But with pacing and stay at home, it's different, and it can, play by post. I like that. Let's do that.
Let's bring it back. I'm into it. So
well, and
I guess. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to plug you, and I don't know how much we can talk about it, but I got to play something of Bananas that was wild and innovative. That was kind of in this space. Dan, how much are we allowed to talk about that? None.
Oh, you can
None
just
at all.
go ahead.
Is it under wraps?
Go ahead.
Oh man, it was based on The Circle, like loosely based on The Circle, the Netflix show, and it was in Discord, and it was called the Nexus, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah. And so we were all playing people that were also kind of playing people. Like we were playing characters who were like trying to make ourselves liked by the other contestants in certain ways, and like I felt like a reality show. It was really wild. So anyway, just want to plug that there are some really cool things that are being done, even based on like just the fact that we can't see each other. I think that that's a really interesting way to approach games as well, that Alice is Missing tries to embrace, and that I feel like Nexus absolutely wholeheartedly embraces.
Thanks for the shout out.
No, you deserve it. It was wild. I only played half of it, and it was wild. So
I guess since we're talking about design, like how do we start? Like where do we begin when we're designing a game that's for a platform that's like that uses only this one platform, or maybe like a chat based platform like texting or what have you? Like how do you start? Where do you think of the ideas, and like is it different from building like another role-playing game that's for the tabletop?
Start with what feels good, right? Like what about this interaction feels good, and then turn that into an experience. You know what I mean? If you can take this experience and turn it into something where you can start telling a story, that's where it is, right? Sorry, Spencer. I know you sounded like you were mid-thought as well too.
No, it's all good. I didn't want to interrupt. You said something that made me like. We've been talking about a lot of things I think that you can start with, but when you're saying do what feels good, I think that resonates for me so much, in that like we want to look at these platforms that we're targeting, right? Like if we know we want to use Discord, I want to know everything that Discord can do. I want to know how it functions. I want to know all, like, how can we set up rooms? How can we, create different voice channels? Like just knowing your tools. And as designers with games, we're lucky enough most of the time. Well, a number of us are lucky enough that we've played a lot of games. Like we have game shelves full of mechanics that we can go and explore, right? Like, oh yeah, Ivan's gonna pull down. Do you have a thing? Yep. Oh yeah, there it is, game shelf. Mine's on the other side, but right, we have like these huge shelves of games, and these games that we have, like we play games because we hopefully enjoy them, but we also as designers play them to learn, to figure out what we like and what we don't, and being able to identify pieces from games and grab them and use them to create a new experience. And I think in a very similar way, like we as game designers have to treat if we want to design for new platforms, we need to treat these platforms the same way that we treat the games that we have on our shelf. That we use them, we really like analyze them and how they work and why they work, so that we're able to leverage them to their full potential.
And that's terrifying sometimes, because you don't know when software is going to become vaporware, but that's okay, because sometimes you just got to buy in and just see what it is. Like, who knows, Discord could disappear in 3 years and now people have a game, but then that's why digital exists, right? That's why a lot of us are buying all of our games on PDF nowadays and translating that into it. And for more traditional games, because people still don't want to play traditional games, just make those character sheets on Roll20, or make those interactive fillable sheets on Adobe, so that people can pull them up on Tabletoptopia and then just ... and use those built-in dice rollers to make it still feel like, try to make it feel good, but then don't be afraid, like Spenser said, to just lean into the tool. So I've come up with I have a notepad. I have 3 ideas because of this panel that I'm already going on today. So I'm going to have to drag both of you after this and be like,
I'm so excited.
I have ideas now.
But I get the feeling that there's a lot of questions in chat, but before we go into the questions in chat, I want to know, as a publisher, Ivan, how do you market this kind of game to players, this digital format? Right now, people are so hungry for games like this. Where do you even start with something like this?
I mean, where are people at all day, every day, on the internet, right? So if you are a publisher, or if you are a game designer and you haven't figured out how to do Facebook ads, or how to do promotions and Twitter ads and things like that, then it's time. It was time a couple of years ago, but it's definitely time now. Because if you're not engaging the audience that's actively looking for that stuff, because we don't have the luxury of even having distributors and publishers go out there and promoting the games on the shelves anymore. There still are, and friendly local game stores will always be there to help cultivate a community, and they will be there when we get back. Our comeback, right? So, but the goal will always be, it's people are on the internet right now, and they're talking their space. Word of mouth is so much more powerful than it ever was back even when board games were exclusively sold word of mouth, and the 30s all the way leading up to the 50s, right? Before they started taking ads out at FAO Schwartz and stuff, right? So we're back to word of mouth again. Tell your friends, run games, play the games, read it up, post about it, tag us, use our socials. We had a forum way back when Hunters Entertainment first started 10 years ago, and it was a very simple post-style forum, vanilla, super old school, and we were really excited that people were engaging and talking to us. But the Discord server that we have now and the people are inside of it's just so much more active. And there's more people in it because we have more titles now, but just the activity alone and the ability to engage with those people alone, those are the those are the soapboxes of the new world. You gotta foster a community, because people want interaction. I'm talking a lot.
With Alice. There's only 3 of us. It's okay. With Alice, it was interesting because it wasn't designed to be played in this. It was designed to be played at a table together originally. It was just lucky happenstance, not lucky, unlucky, I guess. But it was fortuitous that it landed upon a time where we're all stuck at home. So I can't speak to that directly in a way, but what I can say is that one of the things that I tried to do, to even before I knew it had a publisher, because when I made this thing, I was like, I have no idea who is ever going to allow me to do this. I was like, this is such a crazy thing to even propose publishing in any way. But one of the things I did is I just I went to cons and I ran it so many times for as many people as I possibly could, and got as much feedback as I could, but importantly, I got those people on board with the game. And I ran it more times than I probably should have for my own mental health, but I ran it a lot. And because of that, I got a lot of people that when it launched, we're already excited about it. And I think having that built-in audience, at least a little bit, right? At least having like 50 or 100 people already talking about it when it launches is so crucial to today's culture, today's like Kickstarter culture, right? Like if it doesn't fund within the first week, for whatever reason, it's seen as not doing well. Why? But
more importantly,
whatever, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
we tell people all the time, and people ask me occasionally, even when I was like technically there was a job for a while, the Kickstarter consultant, right? And that's a job that exists even more now than it did back then. But even then, it was like, it is much better to cancel your project if you haven't funded in the first 72 hours, the first week or whatever, than to try to run its course and have an unsuccessful project. As a canceled project can always come back. Funded project always is like, it's like a bad mark on your credit report, which is it's just silly,
really unfortunate.
That's where it is.
Yeah,
but that's because the whole point of Kickstarter is to like elevate projects that need help, right? But so here's the term, the grassroots marketing that you're talking about, where you're just building up people who very much are interested and invested into the game. That's important. Email lists, even though email is about as old school now as slapping an ad on a postage stamp and mailing it off to someone. That's about how old email is nowadays. It's still incredibly powerful because it's very easy to get people to sometimes read an email. And even if you convert a couple of % of your entire email list, that's still people you've never had an opportunity to touch before. And it's certainly not people you're going to touch otherwise, just by necessarily scrolling through social media, which is very easy to bypass nowadays. So I could talk, unfortunately, about the marketing stuff forever. So, question.
So let's go on to some of the questions. So we have a question here.
Yeah.
Are there unique safety considerations that come in when playing from home? So for me personally, I feel like when I'm playing from home, I book myself out a lot. And I forget about bio breaks. So I don't know if anyone else has like run into similar situations in terms of safety when playing from home.
I mean,
go ahead, Spenser.
You want to go? You should go. You should go. You should go. I just jumped in.
Stop this. We need to stop this. I mean, no. Sir, no, after you, please.
So especially running Alice, and sorry, I keep going back to it, but that's like the stay-at-home thing that I've been doing the most recently. There's safety tools built into the game itself that I think are really important for stay-at-home play in general, because we don't get with the reason why they're baked so specifically into Alice is because we're not looking at each other when we're playing. We're all in our phones or in Messenger or whatever. But I think that that's something that can be expanded out into virtual play, because like Ivan said, we're not always looking at each other on these screens, and it's really hard to get social cues, right? Like when you're on, it's really hard to tell when somebody's uncomfortable, especially when somebody turns off their camera. Like there is absolute validity to people not wanting to play games with their camera on, because exactly what we talked about, right? Like the fatigue from looking at yourself. But at the same time, we have to be conscious of what that does to our ability to read each other and to gauge whether people are comfortable and to gauge whether people are understanding. So I think that I don't have like a specific tool that would work for everything, because I think it really depends on the game that you're playing. I think that you should always have safety tools on the table to make people feel comfortable. But which ones you're using will depend on your group and will depend on the game that you're playing. But utilizing them in a virtual space is, I think, even more important perhaps than utilizing them in the actual physical space, simply because we can't read each other as well, and we can get into dangerous territory.
I don't have a solve for this. Like, and I agree with Spenser 100%. Like the tools are there to be used, right? And thankfully, we've been gifted with a whole generation of amazing safety tools to be able to provide into this. But the one thing that I can suggest, just because it's something that I would feel good about and want to talk to people, it's something that I would encourage in my games, especially horror games, which I do love, is that session zero that's so pivotal, especially in horror games, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page about like what kind of context and what kind of things could come up, and making sure that everyone's in it to win it, and but also knows at any time that they have a chance to stop, like that kind of situation. Don't if this is already uncomfortable and you're already kind of figuring out to play that space, don't do that on Zoom. Like, don't do your session zero. Don't have those transparent, very, very important conversations. Do this. Pick up the phone, call your friends, like just have that phone call conversation with them and be like, okay, on the game Friday, we're going to run 10 candles. Like this is the stuff that I've talked to that everyone's okay with. And these are their kind of like hard no's that they don't want to do with. Like, how you feeling? Like, what's going on? What you doing? And don't be afraid to do that. Like, you don't have to, just because you're playing an RPG or Zoom or Discord, whatever, does not mean that you have to limit yourself to that medium in order to have a meaningful interaction with the people who are in your group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do want to note too, because it can be awkward in this space, as we've already seen, talking over each other or not knowing when to speak, like it can be an awkward space to interact in. To Ivan's point, connecting one-on-one with your players before you begin, especially people you haven't played with before, is so incredibly key, especially in games that, that content like this can come up. But in any game, really, I mean, I think that it's, connecting one-on-one with them to have that discussion and making it known that if they have anything that they want brought up to, that they have a line on, right? Or like that they, a technical term line, but like that they aren't comfortable exploring in the game. And they don't feel comfortable bringing it up on a call like this because it can be awkward, because it can be hard to explain, or they don't want to have to explain. Giving that to you as the GM or the facilitator to bring up anonymously at the beginning of the game, being one-on-one with them allows you to have the opportunity to get that from them and to be able to go, hey guys, we aren't going to explore, or hey friends, we aren't going to explore this thing in the game. We're putting a line on this, and there needs to be no direction to anybody in specific, which I think can be difficult at a table or online, but can be even more awkward in a space like this.
Mm-hmm. I think the ironic thing too is that, like, even though we're playing, in an isolated environment, we still sort of are hesitant to use things like, the open door policy. Like, even though it's like really easy for you to just be like, okay, I've had enough, I'm going to turn off my computer, away from my phone, and like do whatever. Like, it's still really hard to do these things just because, you have the set time expectation, you have like, all these things that you have to sort of like make sure that that you're like still within these social boundaries. So yeah, it is kind of difficult, and there's no like one fix, but definitely like talking to the group, and like what everyone was saying, like what Ivan and Spenser were saying, like, having expectations set, having that session zero, like all of those things, it's really important. We have another. Oh, sorry. We're going to say something.
No, please. No, I know that people do want to answer questions, and I'm just also thinking about people's personal information, because I know we're doing like a lot of con games, and this is why like some people, I just talked about, hey, pick up your phone, call your friends. It's like, I mean, some people don't want to give away their phone numbers either. So it's like just again, use the tools that are available to you. If you need to connect on Discord, if you need to email, like go for it. Because
however you feel comfortable.
Right. And to your point about the open door policy, Banana, it's like when we are all getting together, everyone has the means in which to get up and, like you said, walk out if we just need a break, and no one's going to judge or be weird about it. Otherwise, I got to go 10-1 or whatever. But you're right. As soon as we like sit in these chairs, we like feel weirdly obligated to be here until we turn off the camera. And I think we just need somehow, as a culture, we just need to get like past that, where we're just like, hey guys, I know it's a panel right now, but I need to go. So I'm sorry, but questions. I'm sure people have questions.
So we actually have a really interesting question, which is, any suggestions for good epistolary snail mail games for email or old school postal mail?
I know about postcard board games. Those are fun, but
Hmm.
play by mail. Uh, it's hard rough
There
because
was
the
there was
postal.
one there was one in the itch.io bundle that was available for the big one, the one that was like that raised like $5 million. I can't remember what it was called. It's like racial injustice bundle or whatever it was. There was one in there that's really fascinating. I haven't had the chance to play it, but you're basically like sending on paper. They're like paper boats that have writing on them, and you're like discovering a story through that. Anyway, it's fascinating space. Uh, there are a number of them that I've seen people, you know, talking about developing. I haven't seen one that has come out that has resonated with me yet, but I think that the a cursory search on itch.io you might find something that resonates with you. But yeah, I haven't found one that I've grasped onto. There's been some ideas that have been floated around. One of them, Jabari Weathers is developing one that's really fascinating. I got a chance to see a little bit of it at Big Bad Con last year, and it looks really cool. I haven't had the chance to play it, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that with them when we have the chance. But yeah, they're developing one that might be one to when it comes out to check out. But I can't. That's a tough one. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know. I'm stuck too. It's like thinking about ones because it's weird. But you can't control the postal service. That's another challenge of this. So whether you'd have to you kind of have to also think about like, okay, can I integrate those fail safes mechanically into again a satisfying game? But like the play by posts, I know there's people out there who've got to be trying to like scratch at that door a little bit. And even if Spencer and I and Banana don't have one like immediately off the top of our head, that's a good sign if you're interested in getting into the games right now. That
I
maybe mean
I
that
will
there's something there.
Oh, so we
I
got
will
one
say that there
suggestion.
is. It's not. Oh, okay. Yeah. What is it?
Oh, say what you mean by Riley.
Oh, okay, okay. I
Interesting.
don't know
Okay.
that one.
Yeah. I haven't
I
I
was
haven't
going to
read it.
say something by
There
Jian Shim, but oh, go ahead.
there is one. There's not a. It's not a an epistolary, but not in a traditional sense anyway. But it's called The Machine by Adira Slattery. I don't know. I don't know if I'm pronouncing their name right, but I don't know if you checked it out. It's wild. It is so cool. It is a game. It's a journaling game, but you're writing about. Let me just find it really quick. Yeah, it's the curse snuck up on you, and now you can't escape. You're not sure how or when it began, but every waking moment you feel the machine call to you. Behind its words are music beckoning you to build. The impossible notes echo in your mind, and you know what you must do. You can see it now, this manifold instrument. You will complete this infernal machine or die trying. And it's a journal role-playing game where it gives you prompts, and then when you get done, you send that journal to somebody else, and they read the story, and then they have their own story that comes off of that story. And it's passed from person to person through the mail that way, or physical or whatever you want to do. But you're passing this information to them. They're reading the history of that thing, and then they're getting prompts, and their story is coming out of the story that you've built, which feels very similar in that way. But yeah, a fascinating sort of idea. It's something that definitely spurs in me, like so many journaling RPG ideas that actually feel like you're collaborating with other people, because that's my hardest thing about journaling games is that I'm only having a conversation with myself. If it was something like this that allows me to actually interact with somebody in some way, even if it's only one-sided, that's definitely more appealing to my sensibilities or my preferences, I guess. But something to check out if you haven't. It's again, The Machine by Adira Slattery.
Yeah, we have
Sorry
another
if I
one
butcher
here.
the name.
We have another one here that's Dear Elizabeth, which is a letter writing RPG from the 200 word RPG challenge. So that's a really cool
Oh,
challenge to
interesting.
check out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. For all of us designers looking at 200, yeah. What can I do in that much? Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, so Lucian Khan and I have also been talking about working on a cursed email. RPG where it's like, you remember those curses that you get in the mail where it's like, if you don't pass this on to like 10 other players or 10 other people, then
A
you're cursed.
letter
So
chain
good.
RPG.
It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, that's so fun. Those cursed letter chains. You have to keep going. It's almost like a bad game of it's almost like a bad game of narrative telephone. In addition
Yeah.
to just like writing the cursed letters. That's so fun. Hold on to
It's
that
going to be
one.
both it's going to be both very, very hilarious and very, very us humor.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
we
for
have another
sure. I love it.
we have another question here that is, what are the best chat tools for games anyway? Any simultaneous audio? Oh, sorry.
Well,
Any with audio.
most services do use simultaneous audio, at least to my understanding. And just because you have simultaneous audio doesn't necessarily mean like the etiquette of Zoom, right? Like if someone has a delay like Spenser has because his signal is going up to a satellite, bouncing down, and then getting connected to us, and we're all through a traditional internet piece. It's like one of the things that I do like about Zoom is it does have a hand or raise hand or a thumbs up emojis that are on the video. So when you're looking at the gallery view, if someone has a question, they can really use the like raise hand emote inside of it. So, but most of them have simultaneous audio. It's just about like making sure you have the etiquette in which to use it appropriately. Yeah,
I wonder if
maybe
we
I'm
get Zoom
misunderstanding what
to put
simultaneous
X
audio
cards
is.
into
Oh,
X card emoji into the Zoom Zoom chat. I use Discord. I use Discord for that. That's just like my go-to, and it tends to do pretty well in simultaneous and in chat. Unless I'm trying to replicate if I'm just using chat as a means to an end, then Discord tends to function just fine for me. If I'm trying to emulate a certain look or feel, to get a to create atmosphere, then we might go to somewhere else. That's why we use Messenger for the live play. If we did for Alice, because it felt more like a phone interface than Discord did. Discord just felt a little bit chat room, or like I don't know. It just didn't feel right. Where Messenger felt more like a phone. So I think that's a consideration depending on the game you're playing. But if you're just looking for utility, it tends to work.
Yeah, it is utility. It is a tool.
Yeah, I think for Alice is missing, like the phone function, like the chatting is way more intuitive, like versus if you were to do it on Discord. And also it gives you that sense of
100%.
urgency as well. Because like when you're texting, you're just like, oh my God, I got a new text. I gotta like respond to this. I gotta respond to that. Like it doesn't, you still have that urgency when it's like a Discord type game, but I think it fits better, a lot better with like a phone.
Yeah,
it hits that button because you're also trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
You get that those little bit of adrenaline pushes when you're trying really hard to either swipe or type a response, but you're seeing they're also typing at the same time. There's a lot.
You're getting the ding. Yeah, you're getting the ding of the other messages that are like the notifications as they're coming through, and you're like,
what did someone on our chat the other day was like my like I've been sitting, but my heart rate is so high that like my iWatch thinks
Fitbit
that I'm
is
like
so
running
high.
right now. Yeah.
yeah. Somebody was like, my Fitbit thinks I'm exercising right now because my heart rate is so high. It's like the biggest compliment I could have asked for from that game.
Cool.
That's so great. Do we have any other questions? We're good?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to end it here and say thanks everyone for joining us and for talking to us about stay-at-home gaming. And thanks for both of you for joining me in this. So if people want to find your work and they want to find you in general on social media, go ahead, plug your stuff, plug your socials. Whoever wants to start.
No, it's all good. So I'm Ivan Van Norman. You can find me at Hydra_Lord on all of the socials. If you have an opportunity to check out Hunters Entertainment, they're on all the socials. On Twitter, they're Hunters_ENT. Since you're on Twitch right now already, it would mean a lot if you could make a new window, pop over to twitch.tv/Hunters Entertainment, give them a follow. They're going to have a bunch of cool stuff. They're going to be running 2 shows a week now, hosted by Markia McCarty. we're going to be doing live plays, and we have a show called Hunter's Gathering, where we're going to kind of be pulling the curtain back behind on development as we continue to like move forward with a lot of our titles. And it's just a great place to kind of like talk about RPGs in general, some of the stuff that we're working on, and we're going to bring other people on who are talking about their stuff as well too. So Hunter's Entertainment, if you'd like to check that out. And yeah, Banana, thank you for moderating this and dealing with all of the that is.
This was a super fun panel.
You're super fun is what it is. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Dog! We got to see Dog.
I promised,
Dog,
so I have to deliver.
Oh God!
Okay,
Well, tell us
Spenser,
the
where
name
can we
of your
find
dog.
you?
Yeah, you can find me at Spenser Starke on Twitter and on Instagram. And you can go check out Alice is Missing at alicesmissingrpg.com. And that is available to backers now and will be available widely soon. And it would mean the world to me if you could go give it a check. And also, we have the live play that just happened. If you want to go to Twitch, twitch.tv/Hunters Entertainment, and go look at the live play we did. It'll give you sort of an idea of how the game is played. But thank you so much, both of you, for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it's always such a pleasure to talk with both of you.